Well, I'm delighted today to be here with Murat and Werner from Get Golden Visa. We're going to be talking about the company they founded, the unique service proposition, and the latest from the Portuguese Golden Visa market. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Murat, perhaps we could start by hearing a little bit more about Get Golden Visa and what you do as a company.
Of course, happily. So we started Get Golden Visa back in 2014 with the intention of being a transparent, good kids on the block company in the investment migration sphere. Back then, the sector wasn't as big. Still, it's growing. It's not that big, but we were lucky enough to be growing together with the sector, and we were at the right place, right time. So today, we grew into 5 different offices, 5 different teams throughout Europe, in London, in Madrid, in Lisbon, Athens, and Istanbul. And we were lucky to be able to help thousands of different families find options that are right for them across the 15, 20 different residency and citizenship by investment programs in the world.
Fantastic. And is there any trends as to where those clients tend to come from, Werner? What kind of countries or situations do you commonly see?
Well, we helped throughout these years over 45 different nationalities. I would say the top 3 nationalities are US, Turkey, and UK, but from all continents we have clients from.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your service offering and the specific niche. What does Get Golden Visa do on the investment advisory side?
Right. We basically provide 2 services, David. One of them is investment advisory. So regardless of the program, whatever the qualifying investments are, we serve our clients in finding the right path that would really fit their tailor-made needs. And the second one is process handholding. So each of these programs have their own different mechanisms, if you will. So we help our clients navigate through those mechanisms and obtain their residency permits or citizenships within the countries they're going for.
So the Portuguese Golden Visa program, give us the highlights and headlines from that, where we are now.
Right. So first things first, the misconception that the program is over is actually not true. The program is still going on. It's still one of the most popular programs out there. And the only thing is that Portugal did change the program significantly a couple of times within the last decade. And the most recent one eradicated the real estate option. So you can no longer purchase a real estate or invest in a real estate related fund to get a Golden Visa. But there are still 4 routes that go to the Golden Visa in Portugal, and the most popular one by far is investing in a Portuguese venture capital or private equity fund, a total amount of 500,000 euros or more. And that would give you and your family the right to have the Golden Visa in Portugal, live, work in Portugal, and travel freely across the Schengen region. And the main value proposition over there is basically the fact that you're eligible to apply for a citizenship at the end of 5 years of holding the Golden Visa in Portugal.
So you're still very much open for business. So despite what people might have heard, if they look at it more closely, there's plenty of options to invest and successfully secure these residency options in Portugal.
For sure. I would say that 95% of the investors choose the fund route, as Murat was mentioning, so investing in a private equity or venture capital fund. So this is clearly, like any other investment route, there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of the fund route, I would say, is a highly regulated market. All of the funds are approved by the Portuguese Market Commission, CMVM. Then professional management. Fund managers with track record are in charge of calling the shots. Then hassle-free investment. So experienced fund managers are on the driver's seat. Tax efficiency, this is very important. So in terms of capital, annual dividends and capital gains, there are no taxes in Portugal for non-residents. And also the diversification, because it's allowed to invest in multiple funds, and this is very interesting to diversify your risk.
Okay, fantastic. And it's a competitive landscape in the world of global mobility. How do you compare Portugal with other jurisdictions?
That's a good question, actually. You're right. Different programs are popping up left and right, some better than others. But the value proposition for Portugal is really Let me give you an example. So we get a lot of clients from all over the world, and we typically face 3 pointers that people really want to opt in for. Number one, people want to make an investment, not a donation typically. Good or bad investment, but an investment nevertheless.
They're not writing that capital off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then number two, typically most of our clients opt in for the European Union. There's many programs in the Caribbean as well that will give you the passport right away in exchange for a donation. But a lot of people, considering the future generations and whatnot, still want it to be in the European Union. And number three, most of our clients, they're not really willing to relocate to another country full time. So they want to stick to where they are currently, either because of their business, their family, their lifestyle, whatever might be tying them to there, but they don't want to relocate, but they still want to get the path to citizenship. So the only country that allows for all 3 of these at the same time is Portugal. If we were to compromise from any one of these 3, there's different options.
Murat, so how would you summarize the position at the moment, looking at the market at large and the Portuguese offering within it?
The investment migration sector, it's growing, but it's also shifting constantly. There's different dynamics that are playing for that growth. There's a growing demand, both geographically, but also in terms of the socioeconomic classes that these programs are catering to. And with that, different programs are popping up all around the world, really. Now, within that, some of these programs, they allow you to make a qualifying investment. It goes to a residency permit, and it stays as a residency permit as long as you hold on to that investment. Some of these programs, you make a qualifying investment, it goes on to a residency permit, and at the end of a certain number of years, if you fulfill a set of requirements, it can then turn into a citizenship. And then some of these programs, you make a qualifying investment or a donation, and it directly goes into a citizenship. Now, having said that, there's different programs with different value propositions. So there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. Now, within that, some people prefer programs like the Greek Golden Visa, the Spanish Golden Visa, the Hungarian Golden Visa, the Italian Golden Visa. So these are typically similar value propositions with small different nuances that are different than one another. For instance, the Greek Golden Visa went through some changes recently. Now there's 3 different tiers. You can either invest in 250,000 euros in a converted real estate from commercial to residential, or 400,000 euros in a rural real estate, or 800,000 euros in the cities. And that would give you and your family a golden visa in Greece. What does that give you? The right to live in Greece, the right to travel across the Schengen region without an extra Schengen visa. Spain, on the other hand, 500,000 euro real estate investment, similar value proposition. And then Hungary, 250,000 euros in a real estate fund, or 500,000 euros directly into a real estate, and then that would give you a 10-year visa, which would then be renewable as well. So each of these have different nuances that are different than one another. And then the Portuguese Golden Visa, the main differentiator in that one is, yes, there's no real estate investment available, but you can invest 500,000 euro in a qualifying fund in Portugal, fund or funds, and in exchange for that, get a Portuguese Golden Visa. What does that give you? It gives you the right to live and work in Portugal, travel freely across the Schengen region, but at the end of 5 years, if you fulfill the stay requirements of 7 days a year in Portugal, you can then be eligible to apply for a Portuguese passport as long as you have no unpaid taxes in Portugal, you have a clean criminal record, and you pass an A2 level certification in the Portuguese language. So, and then there's all these programs in the Americas, the Latin American ones, in the US, there's the EB5. Different flavors for different appetites, really. But the overall market is growing. It's going through changes for various reasons, for political pressure locally in some of these countries, and then for some of the union's pressures, like in Europe, the European Commission is putting a lot of pressure against these programs. So every year we're seeing a lot of shifts, but the good thing is most of these changes, they're not retroactive, meaning they do not affect the people that have already signed up for the program. They just affect the people that applied after the changes were applied.
Provides an incentive to take some action today, doesn't it?
Exactly, yes.
So Portugal's nationality law changes in 2024. Give us the headlines from that area.
Right. So the nationality law has been pretty much more or less the same since the 80s, but there were some improvements in it. And one of the major improvements that came in 2024 is the fact that beforehand, the time to citizenship, that 5 years that needs to lapse, started only once you received your residency permit. Now, Portugal shifted that to say the 5-year clock starts the moment you apply for the residency permit. So the long waiting times of getting the actual residency permit is actually counting towards that 5 years, which is a big relief for many of the Golden Visa investors.
Okay, so just looking at the investment options. So as you mentioned, private equity and venture capital is now available for people to invest in, but doing so carries risk for investors. It's a specialized asset class. How do you help investors understand some of the risks and opportunities of the different funds that are out there?
This is a good question, David. So the most important aspect is when we approach a client, we have to have a clear understanding what is their risk tolerance. If it is conservative, if it is moderate, if it is aggressive, what are their preferences for specific sectors, what are their goals in terms of returns or annual dividends versus capital gains. So it is very important to understand each client's profile to be able to advise them correctly. So this is very important. But let me say that the secret sauce of a successful investment strategy is diversification. So it allows the investments to be spread amongst different funds. This is key for a successful investment strategy.
And so how might that work? You'd pick a basket of funds essentially and allocate the required capital across a number of... How do it work practically for an investor?
Correct. So
approaching?
you might invest in one fund, 500,000, or diversify the investment into funds, 300 and 200, or in 350, 150, 200. So this is very important to mitigate risk and choose. So there are several aspects how you can diversify. One is across multiple business sectors. Another one is regard different fund managers with different track records. Another way is to funds that are more private equity or funds that are venture capital. So traditionally venture capital funds have more risk. Of course, more risk, more profit. So another way of differentiation, of diversification, is also to choose funds that are depending on their investment strategy. Some of the funds invest exclusively in the Portuguese market. Some of the funds invest internationally. By law, 60% has to be invested in Portuguese companies, 40% can be invested outside Portugal. So there are several factors. Some of the funds distribute annual dividends. Some of the funds only capital gains at the end. So there are several aspects to take in consideration when choosing the right basket. But I would say it's always tailor-made to regarding the specific risk profile of each investor.
So could you explain how you work with a client step by step on the investment advisory process?
Basically, there are several steps throughout the journey in terms of selecting the correct funds according to your risk profile. So we start by sending a detailed list of all available funds in the market, divided by categories, private equity, venture capital, different funds under different categories. We always warn our investors that they are going to be confused. Why? Because if they are not confused, they will be the first one not to be confused. Because it's too much information, it's over 50 funds. Each fund has a 40, 50 page presentation, so it's just doing some simple math, is over 2,000 pages to read. So it's normal to be confused. This is an ongoing process. Then normally we go to a second meeting to discuss the risk profile of the client, if they want a conservative, moderate, aggressive risk profile, the type of sectors that they prefer, or the sectors that they don't like, which type of returns they want, and then we discuss a little bit what are the interesting, especially the sectors, if it is more agriculture, if it is more hospitality, if it is renewable energy, if it is funds that are investing in EBIT positive cross-sector small and medium enterprises, if it is education, if it is healthcare. So it's important to define which are the most interesting sectors. Then we prepare a funds comparison short list in order so that each investor is able to compare apples with apples. What are the fees? What is the track record of the fund manager? How many funds are they managing? Since when? What is the assets under management amount? All of that, the fees, in order to be able to compare. Then we set up another meeting to discuss the short list with pros and cons of each fund, so that the objective is to do a short list of the short list, if that makes sense. And then normally clients decide, okay, let's have a call with fund number 3, fund number 7, and fund number 9. So we organize the fund calls together with the fund managers, with the clients, to completely transparent, so that the investor can ask all of the questions that they want. Then it's going, after the calls, is going to be sent additional information like management regulations, other supporting documents for the clients to read. If needed, we have a second or third call with the fund managers to clarify any issue. In the meantime, we will prepare an investment strategy file combining different strategies, combining strategy 1 to 4, combining 2 funds, strategy 5 to 8, 3 different funds, strategy 9 and 10, 4 different funds, in order to be able to give the investor different investment strategies, scenarios. Then we set up another meeting where normally the investor already went through and picked normally 2 or 3 strategies, strategy 3 and strategy 8 as an example. And then we analyze together with the investor again the pros and the cons of each investment strategy that they selected. And basically then it's the sleeping on it and making a decision, a final decision, which is the investment strategy. But what is important is the diversification. So we always tell our clients that rule number 1 is diversification, rule number 2 is diversification, and rule number 3 is diversification, because it's the way to mitigate risk.
So for those funds invested domestically in Portugal, what would you say about the state of the Portuguese economy and prospects for growth right now?
Well, there are some sectors that are being quite interesting in terms of the Portuguese economy, and also being supported by the European Union, which are traditional hospitality, renewable energies, and agriculture. So these are key sectors for the Portuguese economy, and we are seeing several funds coming in those specific sectors. And it's quite interesting because Portugal differentiates itself quite extensively on those particular segments. They are, in terms of investors, there are investors that also prefer funds that are investing internationally, being it in UK, being it in Switzerland, because it's another layer of diversification. Okay, so in the Portuguese economy, international investments. For instance, for US investors, they prefer funds that are not investing internationally in the US, because they are already investing themselves in the US market in different private equity funds or in real estate and so on. So they tend to prefer funds that are not investing in US, just again in terms of diversification, portfolio diversification and assets diversification.
So how do you help analyse the fund manager's approach and really interrogate it on behalf of the client to make sure that they get the right result and are in the right strategy?
Well, first of all, there are several aspects that you have to take in consideration when analysing the fund. First, who is the fund manager? What is their track record? Have been they successful in other funds? What are the fees upfront, like subscription fees or management fees or performance fees? In which sector are they investing? What is their investment strategy? Also very important is what is the exit strategy? To whom are they going to sell the assets? To family office, to other international private equity funds. So there is several aspects to take in consideration and analyzing before making it available in our funds menu.
And what about on the time horizon? I mean, I imagine amongst fund managers, they set out different stated times to how long the fund will operate.
Yes, typically the maturity of the funds is between 7 and 10 years. Traditionally, before the rule changes in October last year, the average was 10 years. Now we see several funds being launched in the market since the beginning of the year with a lower maturity between 7 to 8 years. This is in closed-end funds. Which represents 90% of the market, then we have 10% of the market that are open-ended funds trading in public equities and corporate bonds that you can exit whenever you want.
And what's the significance of picking the right manager? Obviously, on returns is important, is something that clients are looking for, but in terms of their visa application also, how does it interlink?
Well, basically the program is a 5-year program. The Portuguese Golden Visa, and then it's another year to apply for citizenship and getting the passport. So you should invest or be invested for at least 6 years. So all of the funds comply with this requirement because 7-8 years is enough for my 6-year journey.
And what kind of reporting do you get back from the managers? So when you've got clients invested with certain managers, are you regularly meeting them, finding out, receiving the reports
Yes.
as to how they're getting on?
The market is quite transparent and quite regulated. So they issue normally twice a year reports to be available for investors. There is an annual January assembly of participation unit holders. That any investor can be present either physically or through Zoom call. So and they are open whenever an investor is in town in Portugal or in Lisbon or in Porto to visit them and get any information that they think it's relevant for them. Okay.
And what kind of returns do you see being delivered? I mean, where do you set expectations when you're talking with clients? Initially, where do they pitch it? Where do you pitch it with them?
Now I'm going to give you a lawyer's answer. It depends. But it really depends on your risk profile. Okay. There are more conservative funds. I would say it ranges from 3 to 25% per year. Of course, if you are thinking of a more conservative fund, 3%. If you are thinking of a venture capital fund that is investing in biotech startups, of course, the potential return is much higher. Of course, the risk is also much higher.
And so based on that expertise around the investment advisory piece, I mean, what do you think makes Get Golden Visa unique in the marketplace?
Good question, David. We get this question a lot is, why should I choose Get Golden Visa as an advisor? Why are you different than other advisors in the market? I would say basically for 3 reasons. The first reason is that we are the top player in the market advising the Golden Visa investors through the fund route. And this is because we started in early 2019 offering the fund route as an alternative to real estate when nobody was doing that. So we gained a lot of experience. So we placed investors from over 45 different nationalities in over 40 different funds. So we know the market very well. So when in last October, real estate was no longer an option, okay, we continue with funds, which we were doing that since 2019 anyway. The second reason is because we offer an extensively wide menu of funds. So we offer more than 50 different funds. Of course, different risk profiles, different business sectors, different fund managers, and different returns. So we have all available options for a specific client with a specific risk profile. The third reason is because we operate different than other advisors, we do not have lawyers in-house. And this is very important because we want a clear separation between the investment advisory and the legal advisory. So we want to avoid conflict of interest. Okay, so normally, in some cases, the investors already have their law firm. Perfect. We help them on the investment side. In some cases, we suggest 1, 2, 3, 4 law firms that our clients have been working with, and they are happy. And it's the investor that chooses the law firm according to their profile.
Great. And many countries have different entry routes for work-based schemes, but what makes golden visas different? Why are they more attractive for those able to access them?
Right. If we take a step back and look at all of these residency permits and citizenship statuses, it would be fair to really categorize all these programs within 2 broader categories. Number 1, Plan A programs, and then number 2, Plan B programs. Plan A programs are typically programs that countries require you to relocate to them. There's plenty of these. You don't necessarily need to make an investment over there. You can have a certain skill set, you can have a passive income, this or that. But typically these programs will require you to actually relocate to the host country full-time. So typically live there more than 183 days every year. On the other hand, there's the Plan B programs, which allow you to get a residency permit or a citizenship in exchange for a qualifying investment or donation. And those typically have much more relaxed stay requirements. So you don't necessarily need to relocate over there, but you can still keep the residency permit and or the citizenship. So that's the main differentiator of the golden visas as opposed to the digital nomad visas, the work visas, the entrepreneur startup visas, retiree visas, and all that bunch.
And I mean, wealth on the move is a big trend of the times. I mean, if you read the FT or any of the major media or any of the professional connections I talk to, clients' mobility options are paramount. Is this, this is a theme that you play and see in action?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've been firm believers that global mobility is going to be much more accessible in the future and much more sought after in the future. The pandemic just put it on steroids, to say the least.
It's not just for the ultra wealthy anymore, it's more accessible.
Exactly, exactly. So take it back 10, 20 years, and these programs, the investment migration programs, were only catered to the top of the top richer percentage of the society. Right now, it's much more accessible, these golden visa programs and Plan A programs, but there's also an abundance of Plan B programs for people who are not able to allocate such a qualifying investment into these programs. There's all these digital nomad programs, the startup programs, retiree programs, passive income programs, as long as they're willing to relocate and actually live over there.
And I know that you're seeing a lot of demand from clients out of the US. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty there with the election and general climate. I mean, what do you think's driving people to look at options outside of the US who are currently based there?
This is a good question. This is a question very close to our heart because we published a white paper on the subject. We said the great US exodus, why are Americans fleeing the US and looking for alternatives? And we made a huge survey to most of our client base in the US and came up with certain data points that directed us to a couple of reasons. 10, 12 reasons if I'm not wrong, but those included an array of different subjects. Some were not quite comfortable with the current polarization in the country. The social unrest, the political unrest were some of the reasons, but also the cost of living that's been really going quite high in recent years. The inflation that hasn't been there for a long time, but made an appearance again in the recent years. And then there were stuff like climate change and just retirement planning or diversification in terms of investments. So we did see an array of different reasons. across different clusters within the American clients we have?
I would say that as we have meetings and calls with US clients on a weekly basis, and we always hear the same. It's because the country is divided politically in extremes, it's because of social aspects, it's because of lack of tolerance, is because of gun violence. So there are many reasons why Americans look for these plan Bs. And also a driver is also kids, because they want to give them opportunities, options to study or work in Europe. Also, we have seen in the last years an increase of gay couples because precisely of the lack of tolerance, and they are increasingly thinking of plan Bs. So the idea is not to move, but is to have an opportunity, a plan B, if something goes not as expected. And as we see right now, the political situation in the US is, I would say, not the most stable one.
One other factor that would be worth mentioning is really the paradigm shift after the pandemic around remote work. Basically, flexible working, remote working, working from anywhere, it got normalized. So that opened a new door in, well, anyone's mind internationally, but Americans also took their part. So although it wasn't an option beforehand, right now they can continue their career, their work, regardless of where they are. They don't necessarily need to be based in the US. So that created some appetite. And the American way of looking for the lifestyle in terms of work-life balance is very different than the one in Europe. And it can look quite appealing to an American, the one present in Europe, really.
And not only Americans, just to give you some example. We were helping a couple of months ago a couple. She was from South Africa, he was from Norway. Both were working for US companies, one in New York, another in Boston, and they decided to move to Portugal to work remotely. And they say, we have here the best life. Why? The best life? Okay, but explain us why you have the best life. Say, well, we go every morning, 8 a.m., we are at the beach surfing until 12 o'clock, then we come home, we have a shower, we eat something, and we start working at 1 p.m. Portugal time, which is 8 a.m. in Boston and New York. Then we have late dinners with our friends. The next day we are at the beach in the morning surfing again. So we are now inviting our friends and convincing them to come here also, to move here to Lisbon and work from there. So these are examples from that we see in the market.
Because Lisbon and Portugal have boomed off the back of these schemes because it's drawn in great international talent and wealth. And tell us a little bit about the Lisbon lifestyle then for those relocators who decide to come and make it their home.
Well, if you think about Portugal and also Lisbon, it ticks a lot of boxes. Portugal is always far away from any major conflict. Okay? Basically, they say, oh, they are small on the corner of Europe, leave them alone. They have good weather, good food, good wine, leave them alone. So Portugal is always far away from any major conflict. Then it's quite central geographically in terms of the world. So closest to US, closest to Canada, closest to South America. In 2 hours we are in London. From Portugal, in 2 hours 45 you are in Frankfurt. Okay, you are not close to Asia, but it's manageable in terms of the time zone, which is the ideal working hour time zone is the Lisbon-London time zone. Then English is widely spoken. The cost of living is much cheaper than other European capital. Then 300 days of sunshine. I think it's quite attractive. And also in 20 minutes, half an hour from the center of the city, you are at the beach. So this is why a lot of digital nomads and not only are relocating to Portugal.
And what do you think is unique about Europe's appeal amongst global wealthy? I mean, it's not only Americans wanting to move to Europe, all parts of the world see the benefits of it. What do you think it encapsulates?
Right. There's really a couple of reasons. Besides the fact that history is one of them, the lifestyle and surroundings, great nature, but also the pace of life, I guess, So the concept of work-life balance in the US is very different than what it is in Europe. So people typically, there's this concept that people live to work in the US, but it's more like the opposite, work to live in Europe. So I think that's quite appealing to a lot of the Americans coming in for Europe still.
And for those researching, finding out more about this area, where does your customer journey tend to start? They discover your website, there's a call. Walk us through a journey with a new prospective client. What tends to happen?
Right. We do tend to cater to different stages of the funnel, if you will. So a lot of clients typically find us researching about how to relocate or getting residency options in Europe or the specifics of the Golden Visa programs and whatnot, but also through other channels where they're really researching about what kind of alternatives are out there to stay extended amounts of times in different regions of the world. So I wouldn't really put it into one specific channel, but we do get an array of different channels that feed to us prospective clients to be.
So for those interested in finding out more, where should they go?
Just visit our website at getgoldenvisa.com and then email us or call us. We'd be happy to help.